think anger is power. It is not. Rage is a confession that someone else just seized your nervous system.
The moment they trigger you, they stop being annoying and start becoming the hidden author of your next move.
Anger does not prove strength. It strips you of strategy, precision, and the one thing predators fear most, command.
So forget who insulted you for a moment.
Ask a better question. Why do they still have access to your biology?
Most people think anger begins with disrespect. It does not. It begins when ego mistakes discomfort for actual danger.
An insult lands only when some part of you still believes it deserves a hearing, a trial, a verdict.
Words are rarely the weapon. The weapon is the insecurity those words manage to touch inside you.
That is why two people hear the same insult, and only one of them burns.
Predators understand this better than you. They do not argue first. They scan for your emotional dashboard.
They watch your jaw, your breathing, your silence, and search for the phrase that changes your pulse.
Their real objective is not truth, not justice, not even conflict. It is access.
And once they have access, your next reaction becomes cheaper, easier, and far more predictable.
History keeps repeating one brutal lesson. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest one.
When Napoleon erupted, he looked small, a screaming emperor losing ground to a minister who refused to move.
The crown did not control that room. Composure did.
That is how hierarchy reveals itself under pressure, not through noise, but through stillness that does not crack.
The instant you react, you step down from judgment and enter the mud with the aggressor.
You tell them your piece is cheap enough for any fool to buy.
And that is an expensive confession to make in front of someone testing your status.
So the first rule is simple. Stop treating provocation like a command that demands immediate obedience.
Between what happens and what you do, there is always a gap, even when it feels microscopic.
Most people never use that gap because they confuse reflex with honesty and impulse with authenticity.
But reflex is not truth. Reflex is conditioning, wearing the mask of truth.
Viktor Frankl understood that survival begins when you reclaim that narrow space between stimulus and response.
Inside that space lives dignity, strategy, and the lost territory nobody can seize without your permission.
Stretch the gap by 3 seconds, and the whole emotional equation starts to break apart.
Your heart may rise, but your mind stops signing contracts for wounded pride.
The next move is colder. Stop participating emotionally and start observing clinically.
A doctor does not argue with a fever. He does not debate with vomit.
He studies the symptom, identifies the cause, and refuses to borrow the patient's panic.
Use that frame when someone unloads chaos onto you in a meeting, hallway, or kitchen.
What feels personal is often just pressure leaking from a mind that cannot regulate itself.
They are not handing you truth. They are leaking disorder in public.
If you mistake leakage for authority, you will absorb tension that never belonged to you.
Marcus Aurelius knew this. Difficult people were not cosmic injustices. They were ordinary features of human nature.
The expected vanity, pettiness, envy, and selfishness, the way a blacksmith expects sparks. When you expect flawed behavior, You stop acting shocked when flawed behavior arrives.
You stop asking why they are irrational and start asking what they are revealing.
That shift turns offense into information and anger into data.
A second trap appears here, the fantasy that other people should behave according to your private script.
Reality never signed that script. Your ego did.
People will interrupt, posture, lie, accuse, exaggerate, and sometimes parade weakness as if it were force.
You can influence some of that, avoid some of that, and answer some of that. But you cannot command reality to stop containing unstable human beings because you find them inconvenient.
Your anger is born the moment you demand that reality be different.
You say they should not have done that. That is not morality. That is a tantrum against the inevitable.
Cato became memorable for one reason. He refused emotional servitude to the people attacking him.
A man spits, shouts, or strikes, then waits to see whether your inner world will bend.
If you refuse that bend, the event remains physical, but never becomes sovereign over your mind.
That is not passivity. That is ownership over what gets admitted into your kingdom. Most people protect their house better than they protect the doorway to their emotions.
They guard their wallets, yet hand their entire soul to a stranger for the price of one insult.
One rude sentence ruins their focus, poisons their meal, disturbs their sleep, and follows them home.
Your attention is capital. Your baseline is capital. Your nervous system is capital.
So why spend something that valuable on people who contribute nothing but noise?
Julius Caesar understood this with almost terrifying clarity. Status is not something you beg lesser minds to confer.
Even as a hostage, he behaved like his value was never available for negotiation.
He did not plead to be understood. He remained oriented toward outcome.
Then, when action mattered, he moved with precision instead of theatrical outrage.
That is the difference. Anger performs danger. Disciplined action delivers consequence.
Many people mistake loudness for strength because they were raised inside unstable emotional theater.
They learn that the fiercest voice controls the room, so stress makes them copy the same performance.
But regulated people see the opposite. The loudest person is often the least dangerous person present.
The body reveals truth before language does, which is why physiology must be trained with mindset.
When anger rises, the amygdala sends ancient survival signals into a modern social interaction.
Your chest tightens, as if damaged pride were a predator charging out of the dark.
That first chemical surge is real, which means philosophy alone will not always stop it.
You need a physical interrupt, strong enough to reopen access to deliberate choice.
Use the physiological sigh, 2 sharp inhales through the nose, then 1 long, slow exhale.
It is not spiritual. It is mechanical. That is why it works. You lower arousal, slow the heart, and inform the body that the emergency was exaggerated. Do it while they escalate and a strange reversal begins to take shape.
They speed up while you slow down. They tighten while you loosen.
That contrast creates hierarchy, without a single threat ever leaving your mouth.
In nature, the predator does not advertise panic to the weaker animal.
Unnecessary motion is the signature of prey. So reduce the fidgeting, the blinking, the vocal rush, and the visible hunger to react.
You are teaching your body one hard lesson. Panic is not available for purchase.
There is another engine behind insult: projection, the attempt to export what someone cannot bear internally.
Shame, envy, inferiority, and self-contempt build pressure until they go looking for a host.
They attack the stable person because stability reminds them of what they cannot build inside themselves.
If they can make you feel their confusion, they experience relief without ever becoming stronger. That is why some attacks feel contagious, as if another person's disorder just entered the room.
The moment you mirror their chaos, the transfer is complete, and their burden becomes partly yours.
So block the transfer by replacing personal hurt with cold, clinical pity.
Not soft empathy that absorbs them, but distance that recognizes wounded people often broadcast their wounds aggressively.
Ask one silent question. How miserable must their inner world be to need this performance?
That question cools anger, because pity cannot coexist with the same level of threat.
You stop seeing a destroyer and start seeing a person leading through behavior.
Sometimes you cannot leave, which means calm must become tactical, not merely philosophical.
Do not rush to defend yourself when the accusation was designed to control the frame.
Defense often grants authority by implying they deserve a carefully reasoned answer from you.
Instead, use asymmetrical agreement when the attack is manipulative rather than genuinely corrective. If someone calls you arrogant, calm agreement can break the script they prepared for your shame.
You can say that you are selective, focused, and unwilling to lower standards for emotional comfort.
Now the insult has nowhere to land, because the hidden insecurity beneath it is gone.
You are no longer negotiating for innocence. You are defining your own terms.
But this only works when the delivery stays measured, clean, and free of cheap cruelty.
The goal is not theatrical dominance. The goal is to deny leverage.
At the deepest level, all of this demands one brutal thing: the death of the fragile ego.
The more you crave validation, the more handles you provide for the world to jerk you around.
A large ego looks impressive from outside, but under pressure it behaves like exposed wiring.
Every opinion touches it. Every slight recruits it. Every misunderstanding ignites it.
Freedom begins when you stop begging unqualified people to certify your worth or interpret your identity.
Let fools misread you. Let bitter people narrate you badly. Let the insecure call restraint weakness.
Their perception is not a courtroom, and no law requires you to defend yourself inside it.
Most people live as puppets. You have seen the strings. Now decide whether you will keep them.
You still notice disrespect, but you stop renting your bloodstream to it. Do not watch the strings. Cut them.